Hey guys, welcome to episode 54 of CMD Tower's Brews and Builds. I'm Mr. Common number 5, and my fellow host once gibbered himself into a descent, BigTuck.
Hey! Recent addition. So, okay, I'm going to try out a new one, okay? Hello, Hatters and Alice's?
Ooh, I kind of wanted to make an Alice in Wonderland, like change the name of the deck into something like that, but I was like, I kind of have another bit I can do.
Okay.
But I like it.
I got a bit. I have a bit.
How are you?
I have a bit as well later. Just one for now. I'm doing pretty good. I am taking tomorrow off from work. And I'm heading down to Beaver Lake with some friends. So I gotta go down there, smoke some stoves, fish for some bass, and just kind of relax and get out of the city for a little bit. So I will say this though, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Combo, because I think we talked about this too. Why is it that whenever you take like an earnest vacation, I'm not doing the thing like I did in Tulsa, I'm not going down there and working half a day, I'm done. And literally, I have like 7 projects that have all kind of been like, yeah, whatever, we'll get to it. It's okay. There's no rush and everything. And like this week was like, it is all happening next week or is it happening at all? Like it's happens all the time. So like a lot of people are like, aren't you excited for your 4-day week? It's like, not really. I'm just excited to go through the suck and then have 24 hours to myself that I normally wouldn't. So yeah. Have we talked about that before? Haven't you said that?
I mean, I think what we've talked about is just once you feel the calm at work, whether that's you have an upcoming vacation, you've just completed a bunch of projects, as soon as you let your guard down, that's where, Neheb the Ballbuster comes out of nowhere and just punches you straight in the gonads. Discards a card, get some mana. That's just the way he does it. So yeah, I think that's more what it is, and I think that's that way with life. Yeah, for sure. Anytime you just kind of, everything's great, I don't have to worry about anything, that's when everything's gonna go to hell. So the answer to that is you take a big Tux mentality and just be on edge, cynical, and anxious all the time, because that's what you're working for me. Yeah, exactly. But I'm okay, Mr. Combo. How are you? I'm good. So, interesting news. So my girlfriend was supposed to go have a not serious medical procedure yesterday. And so part of that, they want you to go get pre-COVID tested. So she works in the medical industry. She wears gloves, goggles, face mask all the time. In our personal lives, we are constantly face masking and don't really do gatherings with friends hardly ever. I was gonna say I think you, out of anyone I know, have taken this the most. Well, I'm going to say the most seriously. Yeah. But, that's very true. You have a great point there. But I'm gonna say most seriously. But what that really translates to is actually doing something, like being cognizant of it. So. I think you're doing good there. Yeah, so she tested positive. No! Really? Zero symptoms. No, not even a slight fever. Nothing. We don't know anyone that's tested positive. We don't go anywhere. We always wear a mask and everything. Yeah. And so, she told her work. Once a week, right? Don't you get you get groceries delivered even and all that stuff too, right? Like we go to the grocery store. Oh, okay. But we do the masks and we clean our carts and we don't hand sanitize like 24/7, but who has the time to do that? So it was interesting. So she tests positive, of course, told her work. Yep. And her work has a terrible BS policy. If you test positive for COVID and they can't tie it back to a patient, you get you have to either use your vacation or until you're cleared, you don't get paid at all. What? No way. That sounds like illegal. Get this, within 5 minutes of her telling them that, they went ahead and decided that she didn't get it from a patient or an employee, so she just had to use all of her vacation for the next week and a half. What? That's horrible. So we've kind of spent today trying to see, because I guess there is a small 5% or less where you get a fake positive or a false positive. Oh, right. So we've been trying to find some place that will let her test, so that way she doesn't have to use all her vacation. So that's kind of been the big news around our house. Are you going to get tested yourself too, or have you? Nope. So I took a test on the CDC website. And it asks, if I work in a medical facility, do I work in tight quarters with people? Do I take the safety precautions? And so, I answered everything appropriately. The only thing that I answered negative, quote unquote, was, do you know anyone that's tested positive? And I said yes. And literally the recommendation was, hey, social distance, keep doing what you're doing, and monitor. And if you don't see any symptoms for the next 14 days, then you're fine.
So you're locked down.
Yeah. So I'm good. I went and played disc golf yesterday with the Godfather, and I told him, hey, here's the deal. If you're uncomfortable, I get it. And he's like, I don't give an F. I'm gonna do what I want.
It's Godfather.
And so I was like, well, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm still gonna wear a mask the entire time we play, no hugs, and try to stay somewhat far away from each other. And so it worked out fine. We're gonna probably go play disc golf again on Saturday.
Nice.
The only thing that sucked is my mask was cloth, and so by the end of it, I was sweating bullets.
Oh yeah.
It felt like I was getting waterboarded.
Okay,
the mask was wet.
That happened to me. I've been doing the garter thing with the nose, right? And today I forgot it, so I had one of those crappy masks that they give you for free, right? And I worked out, and I took a big inhale, and it went in my mouth. But then some of the sweat off it sucked back into the back of my throat. I was like,
that's nasty. That's super nasty.
Wait, who's talking right now? Who is this? Identify yourself, caller.
You know what? That's a good point, Tuck. Know your place. Thanks for tuning into the episode, and as always, with that Manolith commentary, whether we want it or not, from Rich Chaos Records Studio is Squee McGee. Hello, McGee to the Squee.
Hey, how's it going? Coming in from left field. More Manolith commentary might have to change to Mana Drain commentary.
Oh my god. It's a cooking book all
Mana
over
Drain
again.
commentary if you had a very mono point of view, but you have a colorful point of view.
Interesting.
It'll continue to be Manolith because it's a trash card.
Oh, well, I don't think it's trash. It's, again, for those playing the home game, 3 colorless taps for any color mana. Pretty good.
Oh, good.
Would probably help you even play a Mana Drain or something along those lines if you needed an extra blue mana. Anyways,
I think that's some real hashtag coward talk there, too. So that's good.
Hashtag
also, by the way, if you're running a Manolith in a deck that has Mana Drain, what's wrong with you?
Oh, I can't wait to see that.
Clearly, there's a list of things wrong with me, so that's not hard to decipher. But I might just put that together because I have the funds, the cards, the whatever we need. It's a Game
of Thrones cookbook all over again.
We're talking foil Manolith into original Mana Drain. Yes.
Oh, yuck.
I'm nauseous.
Good. I'm glad.
I'm glad you feel that.
If you guys want to know more ways to support gyms like this, I say that with complete sarcasm, but we also put out a lot of other content. You should head over to that sponsor, level1gameshop.com. They sell magic accessories like our playmat and our sleeves. They also have a great TCG player store with a 99% accuracy rating and very competitive prices. If you are supporting your own LGS, you can't support level 1. If you wanted to help us directly financially, which would be awesome, head over to our Patreon, patreon.com/CMD Tower. We have 4 different pledge levels, and rewards vary from getting access into our Discord to even getting your own playmat and sleeves and coin and reminder tokens. And if we're 20-something patrons away from actually having you get on the episode.
I will also say, I think our Discord might be in an all-time hot right now.
Oh,
yeah.
Uncle AJ's dropping some fire memes that are just insanely good. We always have the normal...
The dude's a wizard.
It's insane. The quickness.
You're a wizard, AJ.
Nice. Of course, Chuck the Slice, Nick the Hotness. Got a shout out PLP Soul Ring or something like that. So I missed that whole...
Oh, yeah, the instigator with all of his interesting tidbits.
Yeah.
He about set fire as much as Squee does with his
my kind of guy.
Choice opinions.
That kind of guy.
But if you guys can't help us out financially, the great ways you can just share the content you're watching or listening to and subscribe. If you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Well, we've only been doing YouTube for, it's actually kind of crazy. I've calculated, I think I've done 12 episodes.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's month 3 then.
Yeah, but granted, we have way more listeners out there on the Audioverse. So, even if you do like to listen to it on a podcast, just go and hit subscribe. We would love to break that 200 subscriber mark and maybe even do something kind of cool for the collective. Because every little bit of interaction from you guys does help. And of course, every episode we do want to give a big shout out to the music provided by Pink Royal. And hey, stay tuned till the end so you guys can get details on how you can win that sweet land kit from level 1. And we only got one more land to announce.
Ooh.
So stay tuned till the end. So Brews and Builds is our deck tech series. Since we conquered our path to 32, we have moved on to the endless themes that EDH can bring us. Each month will be a new theme, and we correlate how these decks are constructed similar to how a beer is brewed. So, to continue our month of Commanders Who Don't Really Matter, we broke it down into 4 different categories. The first one's rampant setting your board state. That's grain.
Yes, and grains are the foundation of every beer. They include both base malts and specialty malts, usually in about a 60-40 ratio. This helps with the color, the taste, most importantly, the alcohol content of a beer. Decks always need ways to grow, stabilize, and ramp in your bigger threats, and just like a grain profile, they're usually a mix of staples and specialty cards.
Then the next is going to be, how does your board interact with all of your opponents, whether it's their thoughts, feelings, or cards on table? We call that hops.
Hops give the beer its patented bitterness and herbal floral flavors. You're on fire right now. They grow in a variety of strands.
Literally, my ass is on fire.
They grow in a variety of strands and help distinguish subcategories like IPAs. Our hop choices help clear and interact with the board so your deck can do it at once.
The next is going to be, how does the deck actually close out? So if you're Mr. Combo, you can go pass out. We're calling that yeast.
And yeasts are living microorganisms that eat the sugar from the grain and poop out alcohol and CO2. It adds the alcohol content and the carbonation. Without yeast, you'd be drinking flat sugar water. Without yeast cards, your deck wouldn't meet the goal of actually winning the game.
Then we have shenanigans. These could be pet cards, weird off-the-ball synergies that are in the deck that you just kind of wanted to do to, hey, spice it up, spice package.
Not every beer has them, but spices and other additives helps operate a normal stock beer from a specialty one. It could be the addition of hops that turn IPA into a double IPA, or the addition of vanilla beans that turn a porter into a vanilla porter. Not every deck has something that makes it pop, but if it does, this is where we talk about it.
And then to seal this episode down, we have a bottle capping, which is going to be BigTuck's, myself's, and if we have a guest on, cuts and recommendations to the deck that are under $5, under $50, and a personal no-budget recommendation. You just can't talk about mana-only lands, Squee. You can't talk about Taiga next time we do a deck tech.
I might.
Sorry about it.
And I will say, I think this might be a record of bank breaking for me in the personal recommendation. So this could be a good one.
Very exciting.
I'm excited. Well, hey, without further ado, let's get brewing. Today, we're talking, and I have a direct quote from the commander. We all go a little mad sometime. Good old Anje Falkenwrath said that. This is BigTuck's Rakdos Madness deck. I was not hot on this. I thought when this commander was previewed, it was trash. Clearly, I'm a great Magic player because I was way off.
Accurate.
Yeah,
Always accurate.
It can be really impressive. So I think this is also an interesting dichotomy because this is also from the pre-con, right? And if we look at your Rakdos deck that we talked about in the past of Greven, which is built from these same bones, if you don't have Greven, that deck is not doing a whole lot.
Nope.
Whereas, and we'll get into this, whereas I think Anje helps really get this deck kind of moving, but she's not really required to get to the high value stuff that you're looking for. So for those who don't know and are playing the home game, Anje Falkenwrath is a legendary creature vampire, going on record, the worst legendary vampire to run a vampire tribal from.
Absolutely.
Because she's a 1/3 with haste that costs a colorless and Rakdos. Mr. Combo, do you want to read the other 2 abilities she has on the page?
Sure. You can tap her to discard a card and draw a card. And whenever you discard a card, if it had Madness, untap Anje. So that's where, when we were talking about this month of Commanders Who Don't Matter, and BigTuck said, well, I want to talk about Anje, I was a little stumped.
Sure.
Because the whole thing with Anje is you're supposed to keep discarding Madness cards to draw Madness cards, to discard Madness cards, to draw Madness cards, to eventually get to your win con. And you don't run the stereotypical Anje win con in the deck. You run a fair amount of Madness cards, but it's not like overwhelmingly a ton.
Yes. I agree with you. I run 9. I checked it.
Yeah, so it just blows my mind that you even have Anje as the commander. I feel like maybe a different commander would make more sense.
Maybe, and I think we'll get into that in a second. But, the part I really like in this deck is when there's like that big beefy guy and he's like yelling at that one dude from the Emperor who's like on the edge of the pit. And then he says something too, and then the guy goes, "Whoa, this is madness!" And then he says, "This is Anje," and then Fatal pushes him into the pit. You know what I'm talking about? Is that this?
I think you're describing the movie 300.
Oh, that's a movie. Okay, interesting. I missed that on that. That's a movie. Sorry, I've been trying to get back into my movie thing. But I would say, how funny would it be to have Fatal push in this deck? Because he's like kicking him anyway. So I think you kind of hit on the point. When this first got spoiled, the madness aspect of it really kind of threw me, because I think if you look at the other ones, Populate and Morph have like way better options potentially, and they printed a lot of options that really help with them. So when this is the only deck of that year I pre-ordered. Foolishly, but I was in a different state of mind, in a different state of wallet, spend yours. And it turns out that the Madness cards really aren't that good. There's not a lot of them that are really great. A lot of them are awesome in like limited, because you can cheat out like a 5/3 flyer for 3. But by and large, it's less of a. They're not really that great. We'll hit on some in here that are pretty good. But what
It's similar to, because I believe this was the same commander set that Savine came out in.
Correct, yes.
And I thought Flashback could work. Also a mechanic that's not very good.
Also untrue. Yeah, I agree with you there. So I kind of ripped I left in the madness stuff that makes work, because it does feel good if you can get those sort of interactions with Anje, right? Where you're untapping and moving through. And I kind of turned it into more of a, the term is like Hellbent, where you're cycling cards in and out of your hand. And I think Anje is a very good commander to do that. I don't know if there's a better commander in these colors. There probably is. But for how this deck goes, she is kind of she's like the lubricant in the deck, if you will. That will kind of help. She comes out, you immediately get to draw a card, you immediately get to loot. It's effectively having like a Goblin looter or whatever that card's in your command zone is how I'm playing it. I'm much more interested in the discard than the madness effect with her. And like we said, it's just because that there's not that many good madness cards. And they try to shove, and boy, they were like, hey, open your mouth, wide, unlock your jaw, and we're going to shovel in as many madness cards as you can. When I made piles to upgrade, it was like a huge stack of madness cards and like a handful of things here and there. So,
and I think that's fine. And it could be something, I'm definitely not going to go down that route of trying to force a companion on you, A.
Wow.
B, trying to change your commander. I'm just trying to look at it as is.
Sure.
And I do want to try to, through the cards I talk about, I think Anje needs to be more involved in the deck.
Sure.
Than she is, but it could be something that down the line, maybe we revisit this at like episode 90, right. Which it sounds crazy if we ever get there, but we probably will.
No kidding.
And there could be a different Rakdos commander that does literally, I think, what you want it to do.
Right, yeah.
But probably just better for maybe 1 or 2 more mana. Heck, one could come out in Commander Legends.
Yeah.
But yeah, Anje, she could be sneaky good.
Right.
But with you only having 9 madness cards, she's just misleading. It's kind of like your Zur cycling deck.
Yes.
You see Zur and it's like, whoa, calm down. But, it's cycling cards. That's less scary.
Right. And to that point, I think if it gets to that point, there are a handful of cards that you can cut. That you can just cut that, because like if there's a commander that does something like this sort of wheel effect, like you said, then that would make the deck even better, because you could cut a fair amount of the madness cards that are terrible.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. So from a deck construction standpoint, you're at a 303 CMC, which isn't terrible.
And I looked at that too, and I was kind of surprised, because I think this deck never really feels that slow, just because you do have the wheels and moves in your commander, and a fair amount of other things that will kind of slow it down. So yeah, it's like a slightly upgraded precon. So keeping a 3 or so.
Well, and typically madness cards, the CMC is less than the normal casting cost.
Yep.
It's kind of like the reverse Cyclonic Rift effect, where Cyclonic Rift, yes, it's 2 CMC, but really it's 7. So I could see your curve being a little bit less, which honestly in Rakdos, you kind of want a lower curve to begin with.
Agreed.
So like that, your color's almost spot on.
I think that's as best as I could do. And the reason why is because this is one of the first decks that I have constructed and since upgraded since we started doing this podcast. So it's been like, I have never, and to our point here, never struggled with color. Ever.
Yeah.
In any way, shape, or form. It's always been like, okay, I got the consistency. It's never been like, I need more black, I need more this. It's always kind of worked
perfect.
out. Yeah, I know, right? Which
So you're saying our method actually works.
Yes, I will confirm.
You could call it a method to your madness.
Oh!
With that being said, let's get into the grains. BigTuck, start us off.
Right.
What's your first grain card?
There's a few. I mean, because it's Rakdos, you are kind of saddled with a lot of boring-ish mana ramps. There is one card in here though that I think is or was a popper staple, which is I think one of the most powerful cards in the deck from the discard and bringing back sort of mentality. So I was going to start off with an enchantment that's a 1-drop. That's Tortured Existence.
Oh my gosh, me too.
Yeah! Oh, what? You let me go all the way out there? We could have done a rattle.
Man.
Okay.
Tortured Existence is 1 black. It's an enchantment from Stronghold.
I gotta read all of it, right? Okay,
Yep.
so color. Okay, 1 black. Choose and discard a creature card. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. There are terrors lurking in the unseen corners of us all. By Krovax. That's actually pretty good. I kind of like that.
Yeah,
thing. So,
that's not bad. So the reason I picked this isn't because I've seen it work in your Angie deck. I don't think I've actually ever seen it played in your Angie deck yet. But I've seen this dominate with Sir Conrad deck.
yes. Right.
Oh my lord, does it just wreck in that. And I have to imagine, yes, you're not pinging people for life loss, but the stuff that maybe you had to discard early in the game, now you can get back late game, and it still like makes the deck function really well.
Agreed. And there's a lot of things we'll get into that are more from the yeast perspective of things that are really built around when I discard a card, something happens, right? So I've been really trying to build, and I think to your point, I think, well, maybe we'll get into it, but I think that sort of Sir Grimm, whatever his name is, I think we just call him Sir Grimm.
Sir Conrad, thank
you very much. I think he would be, if there was a commander in Rakdos that was more like that, where you got that value from cards going back and forth, I think that's where this deck would really shine, right? So unfortunately, they've only printed a handful of cards, which we'll get into, that really play into this. But once you get the cycle going, this can actually be one of the better cards in the deck. And again, it lets you...
Completely agree.
And when you get this early enough, you can start being like, okay, I really don't need this top-end stuff, because I can always get it back later.
Yeah, and honestly, this card only for $1, it's made me very intrigued into putting it into my Shirai deck, or even my own Greven deck. Because Shirai, for example, whenever I lose a creature power 2 or greater, I usually can't get them back in any way, shape, or form. And so then it becomes a later game, and it's man, I drew... I don't know.
That one thing that always attacks for 1 damage that's drained us for hundreds of points.
Yeah, or a Pitless Plunderer.
Yeah, right.
And it's I don't really need this now. I kind of need that Butcher of Malakir that's sitting in the graveyard.
Right.
Well, let me just swap them. Or even Greven, I had to sack a creature early like a Sad Robot. I actually need to discard this 8-drop to get Sad Robot back just so I can get a land. And I can always get to that card by discarding another card.
Exactly.
So I think Tortured Existence is probably, I would guess... underplayed. We're gonna check the good old EDH rec. So out of all the black decks out there, it's only in 1,858 out of 216,000.
Whoa, that is way low. That is way low, especially because you can think. Do you think that this might also have a home in a Golgari style deck? Where you have your reanimate, right? And you already have your Llanowar Elves that got killed, but you have your Shoulder It or whatever. Tap it, bin it, bring it back, right?
Yep, and you can even look at it this way. Think of a Marin deck.
Yes, right.
To where, once again, early in the game, I'm going to be discarding Shieldred, I'm going to be discarding Craterhoof Behemoth, whatever these big fat creatures are, your Protean Hulks, to get... my Llanowar Elves, my Sakura Tribe Elders to continue to ramp, but then you keep sacking those things. Marin's counters just eventually go up to the point where you're just going to get that stuff that you bend for a black to be more utility. You're going to get it back for free.
Yeah.
So
100%.
Yeah, 100% agree on that. So, all right. My next card, this card numero dos, is one that is one of Angie's buddies.
Whoa.
Angie's Ravager.
Nice.
All right.
I don't get it.
Two colorless red. Creature, Vampire Berserker. It's a rare. It's a 3/3. Angie's Ravager attacks each combat Upheaval. When it attacks, discard your hand, then draw 3 cards, and you can madness it for a colorless and a red. So I like this on a few different areas. One, I like it because of the madness cost. It costs technically 1 less. It works with Angie, so you could technically discard it. You get to draw a card, cast it for 2 if you really want to.
Right.
Awesome. 2, 3/3 is nothing to be perpetually scared of.
Right.
So a lot of times people will maybe just take the 3
Yep, exactly.
if they don't have something to kill it. Second thing, it's attack trigger. Discard your hand, draw 3 cards. Well, that literally feeds into Angie. And she says whenever you discard a card, if it has madness, untap her. So if you had like 3 madness cards in your hand, you're going to discard all 3 if Angie's out. That's 3 triggers. So now you can start doing the tap, discard a card, draw a card. Try to get something out of that to continue the fuel. The fourth thing is, since it's on attack trigger, you've already gotten the benefit, so your opponents are least likely to sacrifice their creatures to kill it. It starts to become like, well, you did it to me, so now it's the player to my left's problem, not my problem.
Yeah, agreed. Wow, man, you're hot on this card. This is one of the reprints that came out with it, and like we said, I think I agree with you on all fronts, but I think what's interesting with this one is that this is a good card, right? But if you weren't playing this deck, you would never run this card in anything, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of like some of those, well, I don't know. The attacks, discard your hand. I mean, there's a lot of decks that want to load up the graveyard.
That's a fair point.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a card that I'm not talking about later. I'm not going to mention it, though, because you very well could be, but it just came out in Jumpstart where you draw half your deck, lose half your life. Just think like, okay, I'm going to draw half my deck. I'm going to discard all of that to the graveyard. Right. And very well, that could be I win the game.
Yeah, so okay. Okay.
And, oh man, I just thought of a 3-card combo. That, Angie's Ravager, and Sir Conrad. Sir Conrad's on the board, Angie's Ravager's on the board. You play that, you draw half your deck, you swing with this, you discard all those creature cards. Oh my god. You probably win the game.
Are you putting Sir Conrad in?
I'm not.
I think I need to. I think he might be the best card in the deck.
So, anyways, Angie's Ravager, I think it has a lot of utility, and it probably isn't going to die unless someone's a good Magic player.
Agreed.
So, what is your second green?
So I have the other pal of Angie that comes also from Innistrad that also has madness. Okay, just a solemn shake of the head. So this is another great madness card, Stormkirk Occultist. So 2 colorless and a red.
Great card.
It's a 3/2 vampire horror. Trample. When it deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of your library. Until end of turn, you may play that card. Madness costs again a colorless and a red. And I think something here that the deck out of the precon really misses a boat on is giving you more creatures and permanents with madness. Because there are a bunch of ones that are like situational, destroy this, destroy that, but then they're just done, right? And a lot of times you may not have the board for it. Whereas this one at least gives you, this one and Angie's Ravager both give you something to do. This card is, this is also kind of falls in the same thing because this deck is pretty innocuous until it gets going. So a lot of times, like, I just need, hey, I have an answer in here somewhere. Just like, let me get you in for 2, maybe 3 if you have a blocker, right? Not a big deal. Just let me get 1 draw off this, right? And then next turn, you're like, oh, there's an answer in here, right? I'm going to dig forward a little bit with my commander. I'm just going to dig a little bit further with this. It does.
You're a monster. All these lies.
What are you going to do? Whatever it takes to not die
not be a monster.
Yeah, just be a monster. There you have it.
I like it. I think this is the type of red card draw that I like. Mm-hmm. The looting red card draw, because red basically draws cards 2 ways: looting and exile off the top. You can play till end of turn or play until the next turn. Yep. I actually like the exile. You could play it than the discard, because with the playing. It could be a land, and you could play the lands out of that. The discard, it's like, well, I may have to discard a land. Oh, I got another land. Awesome.
Yes.
Not what I was needing. Or I have a creature, I'm going to discard the creature. Oh, it's another creature. I'm just screwed because I don't necessarily, I mean, I guess it's like 6, half dozen. I guess you can kind of look at it a lot of different ways, but I don't know. Something really appeals to me when it's the exile effect and you may play that card. It just does something for me. And I guess kind of how we always talk about if you exile stuff like Robber the Rich does off your opponent's libraries and it's just gone.
Yep.
Same can apply for your own library to where, ooh, I am playing someone that plays a graveyard deck. Me exiling now, ooh, I wish I could have cast that card, but, well, I don't have the mana to do it, and now I'm preventing Joe Schmo from doing it as well.
Right, I completely agree, and I think the other reason why this ability is better is because this is actual card advantage. When you're looting and discarding, it's only the illusion of card advantage, right? It's really like more card filtering, where this does give you a full one. And again, like, this is one of the few madness cards that actually like does something, so that's why she stays in the deck. So what do you got for your last one?
All right, I couldn't resist. I did it. 3, 2, 1.
Tibalt the Fiend-Blooded! Best! The only 2-drop Planeswalker Commander, and it sort of works.
That's actually false. There is a Nissa that's a 2-drop Planeswalker. It's just if you pay only 2 for it, she comes in with 0 loyalty and dies.
Fair point. You got me there. But
all right, Tibalt the Fiend-Blooded, double red, comes in with 2 loyalty. It is a mythic Planeswalker Tibalt. Go.
Well, $1 and a whole. It's also one of the cheaper Planeswalkers at $1.56. All right,
because it's not good.
Well, that's not true at all. Objectively false. +1, draw a card, then discard a card at random. You'll probably be able to get it back at some point, and you get the discard. So very important there. -4, might as well be blank. Tibalt the Fiend-Blooded deals damage equal to the number of cards in target player's hand to that player.
Now, to your defense, though, that could kill someone. We've had a lot of people in at least our meta that will sometimes have 10, 15, 20 cards in hand. And that -4 could legit kill them. Now, granted, they'll see it coming a country mile away because it'll take 2 rotations to finally get to 4, but it's not meaningless.
True. And then the -6, which I actually have seen one and have one off of, is effectively Insurrection. Gain control of all creatures until end of turn, untap them, they gain haste until end of turn. So
they deserve to lose.
Yes, no, that's true. Like every time I'm like, really, guys? Like we're here. I played this, and okay. So it's no surprise to anyone out there that I love Tibalt. I like the art. I like the move of him. I like that he's a low cost Planeswalker. I like that he's legal in tiny leaders. And while he's not this is kind of like teetering on spice because the random is you might as well just say draw a card if you like it, put it to the graveyard. So, but again, like this isn't some sort of mega competitive deck. Unfortunately, I have had this. I immediately, when I bought the precon, slotted him in. Immediately, I have not once seen him. Once I played. I know, it's so sad. So I don't know. Like again, it's the best Planeswalker that's ever been printed, so that makes a lot of sense the way he would be in this deck. And 2 red. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do that's better?
Yeah, I mean, look, for this deck, I'm fine with it.
Right.
I think it fits what your deck wants to do. I actually think all 4 abilities are relevant, mainly because of our meta. And I mean, heck, you could even, like, when I'm playing Xerus, if I didn't hit Tibalt, you could just end up hitting someone for like 9, which that's nothing to be like ashamed of.
I agree, and I'm not ashamed of this card. Stop victim shaming me. I know.
No, you know what you should be ashamed of? Gideon Jura. That card you should be ashamed of.
You're not wrong.
So, yeah, he hits everything on all cylinders. He's low-costed, which is nice, because it's not swaying your curve for this potential spice. Yeah. And if you end up discarding him at random, you're going to be like, oh, I wish I could have played it, but it doesn't wreck the deck.
Yes.
Sometimes like your Elspeth hard-on that you have, you discard Elspeth, you feel terrible, because she will dramatically warp the game state. Tibalt's not going to do any of that. So
you're probably right.
Pish, posh, applesauce. We're on to the hot profile. I'll start it off with one of your better madness cards in the deck. It has one of my favorite indestructible angels in the art.
Oh.
She is laying judgment upon you simpletons. We're talking about Avacyn's Judgment.
Woo!
So, colorless red. It's a sorcery. It's also a rare. And it says, Madness X and red. So if you discard it, you discard it and paying whatever you want into X and then the red. And then her block of text, Avacyn's Judgment, deals 2 damage divided as you choose among any number of targets. If the spell's madness cost was paid, it deals X damage divided as you choose among those permanents and or players instead. So I really, really like this because madness, you basically, I believe, get to do it at instant speed. Because, it's on the stack, so you'd have to do it at instant speed. This is a sorcery card. A lot of times the Anje Falkenwrath players will wait to tap her until the turn right before them.
Right.
Which also usually means I'm leaving up mana, potentially.
Yep.
So I could see this being a hop to where I have some serious issues. Let me just see what kind of happens.
Exactly.
Okay, tap Avacyn, discard this. I'll put 8 into X,
right,
and I'll divide that 8 however I need to. It could be a yeast card, because it could be late enough in the game to where it's like, oh, I just drew this. Tap Angie, I bolt you to death, basically.
Yep.
Or, Ruling Earthquake or Fireball, however you want to talk about it. So it fits a lot of your different buckets, and when you discard this, you'll untap Angie and get to do it again. So I think it hits a lot of things on a lot of different levels.
Agreed, and the only thing, I agree with all that, the only thing I'll add in is that this is like the premier way of getting rid of Planeswalkers in this deck. Start picking them down a little bit, because again, like in these colors, there's not a ton of options at a budget level that will get rid of those. So yeah, I agree. Sure. I mean, Avacyn Judgment came in, and I think I have a foil of it that I put in here. One of the better cards in the deck by a country mile.
Cool. Well, what's your next hop card, or what's your first hops card?
So I also have what in my opinion is another banger madness card, another one, and this one's a creature. Okay, ready? 3, 2, 1.
Big Game Hunter.
Yeah.
On fire today.
All right. Big Game Hunter is a colorless and black for a creature, human rebel assassin. It's an uncommon and 1/1, costs 35 cents.
But there's actually not even that much text on it. I feel like you read more than I'm going to read. When he ETBs, destroy target creature with power 4 or greater, it can't be regenerated. Madness for a black.
This, I actually believe that this card could see and has seen play in other black decks. I've seen it in non-madness decks, if you can believe it. So again, I think this again highlights my point of why I wish there was more good madness creatures for things like Tortured Existence that are just creatures, right? Mm-hmm. Being able to potentially like recur this more than once feels real good. To go from your graveyard and up, get the triggers there. The power 4 or greater is kind of weird in black. There's really no other effect that I can think of that does that. But there's going to be some target. There's going to be some creature that you need to zap, whether it's a huge Crater Hoof out of nowhere or
Void Winnower.
Yes, great point. Anything like that. Just a really, really solid inclusion in this. And like pretty much, I mean, I think like the last 2 cards we talked about, if you're playing Angie, it's going to be in close to 100% of the decks, right?
Yeah. And honestly, to your point about this could see play in a lot of other black decks, I mean, I actually toyed around with it being in my Shirai deck for a very long time because it's on ETB, not necessarily the madness. Right. So, like, if I had to discard down to hand size, I could just discard and then pay the madness and play it. Even if I was mana screwed, I only had 2 mana. It's like, okay, I'll have 8 cards. I'll move to my end step. Oh, I'll discard this, pay it, and kill potentially nothing, but it could be something. And then it's a 1/1, so it always comes back with Shirai's ability. Probably sees play in that. I would have guessed it probably sees play in probably non-competitive like Marin and Carador decks. I'd have to imagine probably Sir Grim because I just can't escape what that nightmare is.
Maybe a sleeper hit in a Yarok deck, being able to get 2 targets at 4 or greater. So that's probably getting the range. But yeah, like this card's been around for a really long time. I think it was in. I already give up. I can't think that long ago, but some set from a long time ago when there's a few madness sleepers in there as well. So yeah.
And to your point, BigTuck, it's only in 4,200 black decks total.
40
out of 216,000.
Oh, okay. I was like, 4,200 seems like a lot, but that's like half of that is Angie decks. Half of them are people who don't know what they're doing. So it'll all add up there. It's cool. So yeah, but like,
literally, it's in. We just talked about it. Shirai and Angie. It is in 2,600 of those decks. So out of the 4,200, it's in 2,600 of the two ones we just talked about. So yeah, it's barely in black decks.
Weird. I can't even imagine what the other ones would be. But yes, big game hunter does some work in this deck and does work in a lot of different decks too.
All right. Well, what is your? Oh, wait, no, you just did that one, so now I have to go. And I can't imagine you talked about this card. Can't imagine it. It's a sorcery.
Uh-huh.
And it has Scythe in mind.
Oh, it's not.
That's the name of the card.
I thought
Scythe in mind.
I thought for a second you said Cypher, and I was like, color intrigue. Yes.
What? The Matrix? So, Scythe in mind, guys, is 3 colorless black, sorcery, $2. Mm-hmm. Good God. Mm-hmm. Each other player discards a card, and you draw a card for each card discarded this way. I have literally never seen this card played where it wasn't impactful. Literally never.
In my opinion, in Commander, this is just an ambitions cost or whatever those cards are where you pay life, right? Like this is a 4 mana draw 3 almost every time, right?
Well, this is basically, if you look at it, you pay 4 mana and you're going to have a 6 card swing. Mm-hmm. Because, yes, you're losing a card, you're going to draw 3, so you netted 2, and each of your opponents are going to lose 1. So, sorry, it's a 5 card swing total. Right. Which is, that's amazing.
It's insane. And I wish, so this is also, I think another way that this deck could go would be a little bit heavier on the discard stuff as well. To kind of do like everyone, and it's kind of built in, but again, as we've discussed in the past, doing a discard deck is hard because people just run out of cards and you're kind of like, oh, here we are.
Yeah.
Do you run this in any of your decks? Is a real question.
No.
What? None of them?
Yeah, I know. I don't think I own a copy, though. Ooh. That's the thing.
Audible gasp. I think there's...
I mean, I'm surprised I don't run it in my Nicol Bolas deck, to be fair. But I think that deck it's kind of like all the fat's been trimmed. It's sort of like, a Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. There's not much there to trim off.
You're gonna have to get some stuff off the butt. Yeah, all right. Like I said, I think this card's probably criminally underplayed. I completely agree with you on that.
Well, what is your next card?
Second one.
Because you have 2 more.
I have 2 more. And you have 1 more, right?
I have no more.
Oh, right. Okay, so I'm going to talk about 2 cards. They're both multicolors. So the first one is going to be Grape Upheaval. We've talked about this before, but just a quick reminder: 4 colorless, black, red. It's a sorcery. It's in about $1 for an uncommon, which is shocking to me. So put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. It gains haste, and then basic land cycling 2. Which means you can pay 2, discard this card, search the library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. So I think this is something where this is we've talked about this in previous decks where this is kind of an easy target to trim because it is kind of overcosted and you're like, well, it probably won't win you the game. But I do think that there is enough support in Angie and enough discards where the cycling cards actually do a lot, right? So in this one, again, in Rakdos, it's very hard to find the good mana ramp. So even so the world exists where you pay to discard this, get an ability off that discard on yourself, go get your land, and then go to the races there. There's also if at some point people are going to have to start making decisions about what to take out of their own hands and put away. And I can see it being like, oh, someone like you played, whatever card, you played Scythe in Mind early and someone binned on Avacyn Angel of Hope or something big like that where they're like, I don't even care, I'll figure this out later, and you might be able to sneak that in. The only thing that's the downside for this, in my opinion, in this deck is there's rarely going to be a target in your own graveyard that you're going to want to spend 6 mana on, right? Like
I don't know, man. You have some beaters in your yeast package, and so normally I would agree with you. Like, it's overcosted. You could probably get something better. But think about this. Beacon of Unrest does I think almost identical effect. Yeah. It gets shuffled back in, but you don't get to basic land cycle it. So it's one more mana. You get to use it once, but you have the option for the basic land cycling. So early and mid game, you could hit that rough patch to where maybe you played Angie, no one believed you that you're not playing a good Angie deck, so they killed her, as they should, and now you have no card engine, and you have no mana. That 2 mana could now finally get you back online, because then once you get a land to hand. And then when you're talking late game, it's going to do the exact same thing as Beacon of Unrest, where I've made you make difficult choices, and now I get to pick what I want from everyone. So I actually really like it for this deck. Because of those kind of main 2 points. Nicol Bolas, I wouldn't run this card in it, even though I think it might be in there, but I might have cut it. Yeah. Mainly because I have blue. Yes. And so blue helps figure a lot of that stuff out. But when you're stuck in Rakdos, it's kind of like when you have to make the hard choices when you're in Boros, or mono red, mono white. Yeah. Sometimes you have to run the little less efficient card because it gives you the more flexibility at different points in the game.
Yes. Wow, you're so much gentler on this deck than I am. It's a new leaf.
I'm not always a monster.
It's a new leaf for Mr. Combo. So, last bit here. I'll go through this last one as quickly as I can because there's actually a wall of text. This is one of my favorite new Planeswalkers that's probably we won't see a whole lot out of. We were talking Angrath the Flame Chain. So when I saw this spoiled, I was like, this card is going to do something. So 3 Coalescent Rakdos, that's black-red. It's a legendary Planeswalker Angrath. That's a mythic. And also, I'm coming for you, Jimmy. So it comes in 4 loyalty and has 3 abilities that I think are mostly kind of relevant. So the big one that I use is the +1. Each opponent discards a card and loses 2 life. Sure. That's, I think, the big one, right? So -3 is a threaten ability, which is also good. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap it. It gains haste until end of turn. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step if it has CMC 3 or less. And then finally, the -8, which I've seen this card played a fair amount. I've never seen someone come close to -8 on it. Each opponent loses life equal to the number of cards in his or her graveyard. So the middle one for me is the one that kind of doesn't do a lot in this deck. Outside of like maybe sniping a Birds of Paradise or like perhaps some 2-drop commander.
Reese.
Yes, exactly. Or Lavinia or whatever the case may be. You know, that's kind of like the big win there. What I really like about it is the discard, right? Like I said, there is kind of like a discard sub package in here where discarding a card will gain you value and then also losing life. 2 life isn't anything it's like whatever, but if it happens multiple times over and over again, I mean, we've talked about like you get this down turn 4 or 5 and there's still 3 or more, there's still at least 3, 5, maybe longer turns. We're talking like 8 life and 8 cards for 5 mana, and then double that or triple that for each opponent. So again, I think it's kind of, this is one that's probably could kind of be in the spice package as well, but I really like it. I really like the design of it, and I'm just on board with Angrath, man.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely put it in your spices over a hops, mainly because your deck is more geared for you discarding than your opponents are discarding.
Fair point.
If I had to put it on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being your opponent's discard and 1 being you discarding, I'd probably put the deck at like a 3.
Yeah, fair point.
Majority of the deck is for you to be doing stuff, which that's how Angie wants to operate. But that's where you're in this funky area of, I don't really need Angie to operate. I could do this other stuff, but it's like, well, your deck is still geared for you discarding. It's just you don't have the madness to get the benefit from Angie to be able to continue the train. So I would put Angrath there. I'm surprised you haven't seen the -8 because I'm going to be honest, there's 0 reason why I would ever personally kill this Planeswalker when it hits the battlefield, unless I'm just extremely low on cards until it gets to the 6, 7, 8 mark. You know, it's fine. Sure. I think for 5 mana,
it's right on the range. I'll agree with you. It's right on the range.
Yeah. But I like Planeswalkers, so I didn't cut it.
Yeah.
Well, now we're going to mosey on over to the east. BigTuck, keep talking. I want to hear that voice.
So this is I was trying to hold on to the Commander 2020s because I thought they might go up in price or something. And I remember that this card was in here, so I immediately ripped them apart, and I'm glad I did because the last time I played this deck, this card does work. So It's a badger. Badger.
Mushroom.
That's also a dinosaur. We're talking Surly Badgersaur.
Yeah.
Yes. 3 colorless and a red for 3/3. It's a rare creature, badger dinosaur.
Damn it.
Yes. This one actually has a lot to read, and my eyes are
Oh my
freaking
god, this
closing.
does have a lot of text.
Enjoy.
$5.
I
Good
know,
lord.
right?
Whenever you discard a creature card, put a +1/+1 counter on Surly Badgersaur. Whenever you discard a land card, create a treasure token. Amazing. Whenever you discard a non-creature, non-land card, Surly Badgersaur fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. So literally, think of it this way. You discard a creature card, which usually has power and toughness. Well, Surly Badgersaur takes that power and toughness. Discard a land card, which usually produces mana. Well, you get a treasure token, which produces mana. And I guess technically you can look at it this way. Whenever you discard a non-creature, non-land card, if it's like a removal,
Right.
Surly Badgersaur kills another creature, so it's kind of a removal spell. Basically, whatever you're pitching, Surly Badgersaur somewhat replaces that effect for you.
Right. The only thing I don't like about this card, and I think it's like a slam dunk in all Angie and self-discard decks, right? Like cycling decks, that sort of thing. I was really pissed that they made this new cycling girl Jess,
Really good.
Well, yes, and Jeskai instead of frickin' Esper, so I could get some more stuff for Zur. But maybe only dream. The only thing I don't like about this card is that it's a creature, right? So it could die to removal, and if you get it? If you do a self wheel effect, there is a very good chance this card is just dead. Because you have to fight. You have to fight on each one.
Up to 1.
Right, but I'm saying like if you discard 4 non-creature, non-land cards. Oh wait.
Yeah.
Oh, up to. Never
two.
mind. This card's amazing. I'm an idiot. Oh my god. I thought it was fights. Oh my god.
No.
Oh no.
So have you been playing it wrong?
No, I just read it wrong. Yeah, that all adds up. That's why this card's $5. it's bonkers.
Yeah,
yes.
so I like it because it could be one of those points of the game to where Surly's out, you've already played your land for turn, but you're 1 mana away, but you can't play another land because Rakdos doesn't do that. Boom, pitch that land, get a treasure, you can get out your big banger. I like the fact that you can throw counters on it. If once again, if you built this like an appropriate, it's kind of like last week's episode with the slivers, and if I actually went back to Sliver Queen, how the deck would just be so much better.
Right.
This deck would be piles better if you just made it an actual Angie deck.
Yeah, right.
Because I mean, in one cycle, you could potentially throw like 5 or 6 +1/+1 counters on this thing and just wreck. And that'd be amazing.
Interesting. Do you think that's going to be a theme for this month? Where it's like we turned it away from what it's not supposed to be, but if we just turned it back into the deck that it should be, it actually works better?
I mean, very well it could be.
Okay. And
think of it this way. The decks we talk about this month, they are Batman. And then what we've turned them into is Bruce Wayne when he walks away from the mantle. But he doesn't realize the best version of himself is to go back and become Batman.
Damn. I like it. I like it a lot.
All right, so my next one, I think this card, once again, if he made this an Angie deck, is sneaky good. Probably one of the better Minotaurs in the deck. We're talking about Glittenhorn Buccaneer.
Ooh, that's good.
So, colorless, red, creature, Minotaur, pirate. It has haste. It's a rare. And it's a 2/4. Whenever you discard a card, Glittenhorn Buccaneer deals 1 damage to each opponent, which, if you had Sir Conrad, that would turn into 2 damage if it's a creature card. Then, you can pay a colorless red, discard a card, draw a card, activate this ability only if Glittenhorn Buccaneer is attacked.
I see what you mean.
Yeah, so here's kind of a cool thing, though. We just talked about Surly Badgersaur, where if you discard a land card, you get a treasure. You have other cards that I won't talk about yet, that when you discard particular cards, you get mana. This could potentially end up turning into some sort of infinite discard a card draw mechanic. Because you can generate the mana that you need with your other things, keep activating his ability while he's attacking. Boom, he's kind of shooting everyone for 1 at a time. You got Angie there tapping, so it's like, I couldn't discard the land card that I needed. Tap Angie, let's madness something away, untap. Ooh, it's a land card again. Boom, I'll discard that. I think it could do a lot of stuff.
So it's funny. the more you say, like, you're gone away from the madness for Angie, I was like, okay, I am doing a fair amount of, like, cycling stuff. Because effectively you're doing cycling, right? So, but the issue is the stuff where cycling matters says when you cycle a card, not when you discard it. So I think you bring up a good point. This card also is, like, reverse of another card that's very popular, which we probably won't get into, in such that it does it on your discard as opposed to your draw. I will say that you have correctly identified this as a good card, because the second this comes down, it's bedlam. People are like, what are we going to do about this? We're going to be able to handle this. What are we doing? Are we losing life every turn or what? It's like, guys, it's just a Minotaur. But they also wisely don't
stay off drugs, Minotaur.
probably a heater in the Rakdos Minotaur tribal decks that are floating around too. So,
boo.
Yeah, it's a bad tribe.
So yeah. Anyways, Glittenhorn Buccaneer. If you guys build your Angie decks right, it will wreck. If you don't build it right, it'll probably be okay.
It's
BigTuck.
It's a lot of work.
What is your second card?
All right, so I'm going to talk about what, in my opinion, is bar none the best card in the deck.
Oh, sure.
And it also has one of our favorite audio engineers mentioned on it. Because we are talking about the Squee Goblin to Bob.
Oh.
The OG Squee.
This card is such a cheat. I can't believe they put it in the recon. They clearly knew this thing was just going to wreck.
What are you trying to say about me? You saying I'm a cheat? I don't believe it.
It's 2 colorless and a red for 1/1. Flavor text. Here we go. God, my eyes are getting worse, guys. Some goblins are expendable. Some are impossible to get rid of. But he's both at the same time, which also is very similar to the flavor text that we read about in Nekazar. So at the beginning of your upkeep, you may return Squee Goblin to Bob from your graveyard to your hand. What deck? We were talking about a deck where it was. Oh, this card. This is similar to Norn the Wary and Perforos, where if I have this and 3 lands in my opener, I don't give a shit. I'm holding on to that. It doesn't matter. Literally, this is so. I wish this is. The more we talk about it too, the more I wish that there was a card that did something like Angie that wasn't madness related, because this gives so much value every turn, and it also plays into the other cards that are very good into it, like the Tortured Existence. I'm not sure if we're going to talk about it, but there's other cards where you can discard and immediately get value off of that discard, no matter what it is. It is stupid that they printed this in the precon and they weren't like, hey guys, you actually have to go think about what card's good in this deck, because he's sitting at 40 cents.
I mean,
what else is there to say?
What else is there to say about this? I think the crazy thing with this guy is
how much he likes mana.
The card in general works amazing in Angie.
Yes.
I'm not going to argue that. But the fact that Squee Goblin to Bob is so good in so many different decks is really what makes him unique and function phenomenal. And it's one of these cards that I love that Wizards designed it this way, and the same thing with the other Squee, the Immortal.
Oh, right.
Because usually when we talk about staples, standards, if you run a red deck, you have to do this. It's usually like mana rocks, mana ramp, counter spells. It's usually not you have to run a Sheoldred if you run black.
Right.
Like, it'd be cool if you did it, but, who cares? These Squees fit into so many different avenues that you can literally pick up one and you will always have a deck that you could put it in. Even if it's like a fringe, like, it kind of only works if I have this. It just works really well. Like, if it's in the graveyard, put it back to your hand and now you got more discard fodder or a chump blocker. Yes. And I have to imagine once people figure out your rigmarole, you're getting swung at. So you probably eventually do play Squee at some point and just use it to protect your life.
I will be honest, every time I played this deck, I think, except for maybe once, I've had Squee. I have never actually paid mana to cast him. Ever.
Wow.
I call that value.
Yes, it's kind of nuts. But again, to your point, it was kind of like, okay, Wizards, thanks for just giving me this card on a platter in this deck that's going to use it to death. But enough about Squee. What is your last one?
Last one?
Mr. Combo.
I would see this card came out in Eldraine, the worst set ever.
Oh, okay.
It would get played on Arena, and when it would land, I would do everything in my power to kill it because it wrecked in Standard. And honestly, I probably wrecks just as much in Commander, if not better, because you're getting a 3-for-1. He's the master. He likes pranking. His name is Rankle Master.
He's kind of the cutie guy. He's kind of the cuters.
Yeah, sure. If you like terrible, evil fairies. 2 colorless, black, legendary creature, fairy rogue. He's a mythic. 3/3 for $6. I would definitely wait for rotation before picking up one because he'll drop in price.
He was like 15 when he first got spoiled.
Yeah, because he was dominating, man. He has flying and haste, so a 3/3 in Standard for flying haste, that's great. Whenever he deals combat damage to a player, choose any number, and it will happen in this order. You don't get to rearrange the order, just for clarification.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So, option 1, each player discards a card. Option 2, each player loses 1 life and draws a card. Option 3, each player sacrifices a creature. So if you do decide to pick all 3, they will happen in the discard card, lose a life, draw a card, sack creature order. Which I guess then they will resolve in reverse.
So if
that I'm not sure about.
I think to your point, if there's sacrifice triggers on the battlefield for creatures, those will trigger first. Then the lose life, draw a card would trigger, and then the discard and all the effects that come with that would trigger as well. Right?
Oh, gotcha. So you think basically the bottom ability will resolve first.
Right.
And then the next one, then the next one.
And again, we're not judges here, but I think you're right on reading it that way, yes. And this is a card that I have never gotten to cast, ever.
Oh, that's upsetting.
It's so upsetting. It is bonkers. The only one in here that won't really do a lot is the sack a creature one for you. There's never really a time where you get value out of that in this deck, right? But if you are playing it against a Voltron, we're not talking. This is your last one, right? So we're not going to talk about this, but there are a lot of ways to generate zombies in this deck, like 3 or 4 different ways to do it. So if you have to bin one of your zombies and someone else has to bin one of their Voltron pieces, does a lot. And you said,
sure.
So did you actually play against this in Arena? Was it as backbreaking?
Oh, yeah.
Was it bad?
It was awful.
Really?
It was awful. Yeah. I mean, think about it. Usually in Arena, you don't have, now granted, some of the players in our local play group are standard, and I would say 60-card constructed players. And I've heard some stories where they have tons of goblins or tons of flying 1/1, whatever the hells. But, the decks that I played weren't that. It was Golgari mid-range type stuff.
Right.
And so, the most creatures I would have would be like 5 or 6. But a Rankle hits the battlefield, man, especially, for 4. A lot of times people would cheat that out. And just imagine, even in EDH, if you're able to cheat this out early in the game before really people get creatures set up, no one's ever going to get to have a creature.
Yeah.
Unless they can just make 6 or 7 of them in a turn.
Right, yeah.
Because you're going to hit every single time and always pick the sack outlet. The biggest kicker, though, is it does make you sacrifice as well. So you kind of have to be careful about that. Make sure that you're generating creatures to get rid of. But
again, with
Wrinkle Master of Pranks is
and to your point, with Tortured Existence, even if you have to bin something that's important, you can probably always get it back, too, if we get into that.
Yep. All right, well, what is your last
So this
card?
is the most recent card I put in the deck, and I think it's one of the more expensive ones in here as well. This, I got to give a tip of the hat to friend of the cast, Goad. What's his name now?
The Goad.
I just call him the Goad.
Okay, so he had a deck. He tried to do this deck so many times and just ended up dismantling it. And I will say this card collapsed. We were talking about Kroxa, Titans of Death Hunger. All right, so here we go. Colorless in a black for a 6/6 Elder Giant. It's a mythic for $20. When it enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless it escaped. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, each opponent discards a card. Then each opponent who did discard a non-land this card loses 3 life, and it has escape, double black, double red, exile 5 of the cards from your graveyard.
So something I want to make a quick comment on. So when every time I've ever looked at the art and I look at it from beyond, I'm like, oh god, he has like this gaping red mouth, but he has like a massive foot. He's so weird looking. You have to like really zoom in to see his very, very tiny head. It's there, a very, very tiny head. But from a distance, I always thought that the big hole in his stomach was his actual mouth.
So, and the thing, if you look at the mouth, I'm pretty sure it's just made up of all of his teeth are also mouths.
What?
Yeah, I don't remember. There's some card that has him on it. It's disturbing. So if this is where I think you brought up a lot of points at this. You brought up a lot of very good points about this deck, which is making me kind of rethink of how I want to do it. So I think the way the deck is built is potentially
he would be a better commander.
Do you agree with that to some extent?
Yep.
Because then there's still, so this actually is what I'm going to try next time when I play this. I'm going to swap him and Angie and see what the difference is, right? Because the only thing I don't like about him is he doesn't give you your own discard outlet. But as we discussed, there are piles of ways to do that. The only other issue I have with him is that, as we've seen in our play group, when people see this card, they get very angry very quickly. So...
See, I never got to see the Goad's deck, and I'm very upset by that. And I told him to keep it together so I could actually see it. He absolutely refused because I guess he got hated out of all of his games. Yeah. I mean, look, I play my Nicol Bolas deck. People don't like discarding cards, and that deck I think is probably way worse than a Kroxa deck when it comes to like being oppressive and not letting. And I mean, I don't feel like I get hated on any more than I do with any of my other decks, which maybe that just says something that I'm always getting hated on. But yeah, I think the way your deck is presently constructed, your self-discard effects have nothing to do with Angie. Mm-hmm. Angie is literally, to the definition of this month, you don't need the commander. Right. Which I think, if you kind of look at it this way, Tuck, when we talk about these, first sliver, Angie, you don't need the commander for the deck to function. It's almost a dead card in hand. Because, like, what's the point of having a commander that you always have access to if it's like, I'd rather not cast it because I'd rather do other stuff. Yep. You want to have a commander that you're excited to play. And I think Kroxa, to that point, is a commander that for 2 mana, even though you have to sack it when it comes out, dude, turn 2? Oh, you just Kadama's reached or whatever? Kroxa, get rid of that land. I know you needed it. You could kind of start doing what you need to do, and then later on when you're doing your own discard stuff, it's not like Angie was untapping anyways.
That's a phenomenal point. And on top of that, even without Angie, you will have piles of cards that you don't want in your graveyard anyway. So yeah, maybe we'll give it a swap. Maybe we'll give him a swap.
All right. Well, that's gonna make us migrate to some spicy guys. Man, I wanted to make sure I didn't do the same one as you.
Oh, you're playing now. It's your turn to play this game.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go with the original Vampire Commander that Mr. Magoo used to run. 3, 2, 1.
Go ahead.
You didn't pick it. Olivia Mobilized for War. You're not going to get me like I did you last week, because remember, I just got done editing that episode, so I knew what I did.
I was listening to it, and the rage and the fever came right screaming back to me.
So Olivia Mobilized for War is a colorless Rakdos, arguably the worst of the vampire tribal commanders.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I mean, I think she's better than the other Olivia, just personal opinion. Obviously, Edgar's number 1, but you could kind of debate which Olivia is better. Legendary creature, Vampire Knight, Mythic, 3/3, and she does a couple things. She has flying, and it says whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may discard a card, and if you do, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature, and it gains haste until end of turn, and it becomes a vampire in addition to its other types. The vampire part's worthless, doesn't do anything for you, but this is giving you a discard outlet that, once again, has nothing to do with Angie, doesn't do anything for Angie. And you get to get something haste and possibly give it +1/+1. So if you think about it, if you have Olivia Mobilized for War out there and Kroxa is your commander and it's in your yard, 4 mana, I got a 7/7 now with haste, 3-turn clock.
Yeah, it's hard. I agree with you. I actually really like this card, and I remember when I traded this for $20 like 5 years ago, which was awesome, and then I just picked one up for $2 the other day. I think to your point, the issue is, I think it still kind of goes back to the amount of creatures I run in this. I only run 19, and half of those are just like Solemns and these other like madness cards. So I think Olivia would really shine in like the better version of this deck without Angie, right? Like with, I think to your point, like with Kroxa, because again, it's an end of the battlefield. I just like the build of this card a lot. Like like you said, a 3/3 flyer 4/3 that has another ability that fuels into this. Even if Kroxa was the commander, this is also now this is just another backup discard outlet, right?
Yep. And honestly, this could get run in more decks than it probably does, because you could almost look at this, like, look at Lightning Greaves. That's just a universally good card. This could also just be universally, and it says ETB, you don't even have to cast. Right. So if you have some sort of draw engine, you could put this in any other deck that runs black and red. Like, heck, I could throw it in my own Rakdos deck just to give Greven haste.
Oh, sure. And
nothing wrong with that.
And also, the two last things I'll say, this card in Marchese of the Black Rose, because it gives a counter.
Oh, yeah.
It's really nasty in there. And yeah, that's all I got. I don't know what else.
Well, Tuck, what is your spice
so this
card?
one actually came hot off the presses from a Weatherlight report. This card also fits in Chair Tribal. We're talking about Vengeful Pharaoh. So,
ew.
Oh man,
you don't like it?
I'm cutting
my goodness.
You son of a bitch.
How dare you? And I can kind of see why, because it kind of fits in this like weird, because this deck exists in the ether, this card also exists in that same ether, right? Yeah. So 2 colorless, 3 black for a 5/4 creature zombie. It's a rare, a $1.76 for some reason. I guess that Lich Tribal is really big. So Death Touch, and then whatever combat damage is dealt to you or a planeswalker you control. If Vengeful Pharaoh is in your graveyard, destroy target attacking creature, then put it on top of your library. So for me, this card has worked for me in the past. I have never cast it. I've never cast this card ever. All I do is I've drawn it, I bid it with Angie, draw a new card, and it's just sitting there. I'm like, you guys want to attack me? You're more than welcome to, but I'm going to be able to blow something up of yours. And in that sense, it kind of plays a worse mimic of Squeeze card, right? Wherein it kind of can get you back in the cycle, can kind of get you moving through that. It is a extraordinarily cute card. It's one of the few creatures that I wish I actually could cast at some point, but here we are.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's fine. I'm not like ultra hating on it by any means. It's definitely, I can see the cute factor. The reason I cut it is I was trying to make the deck more Angie relevant. Yeah. And I found cards that will do the same effect. Actually, I think I told you to cut it from one of your other decks. So you'll actually have a copy if you listen to me.
Oh, okay.
And, you know, the thing is, I'm trying to... Yeah, so the Vengeful Pharaoh triggers can't even stack.
Right.
So, you know, it would be different if it was like, oh, I get 8 triggers, I get 8 destroys, and I get 8 of them. Oh, okay, you win. Yeah. But the fact that you only get 1, you know, how much is that really going to hurt a Go White deck?
Fair point.
Or even to that point, a Go Tall deck, if I hit you with 4 7/7s, like, okay, you take away one of them, I still deal 21 to you.
Fair point.
So, but it is a cute card. I do like it. It kind of has this weird squee Goblin Nabob effect.
Yes, right.
To where it's like, I'm discarding it with Angie, and then I'm always going to get it back in some way, shape, or form. Right. So, I can see it. All right, well, now we're going to head over to the bottle capping, and as a reminder, these will be BigTucks and I's cuts and recommendations to the deck that are under 5, under 50, and a no-budget personal recommendation. Apparently, BigTuck said he's breaking the bank today, so we'll have to see and make sure it's not a mana-only land.
I have an honorary mention because I didn't even know this card was in the deck, and I need to cut it because it is not working here at all. So, okay. I am cutting Crux of Fate because it is terrible in this deck. This is an honorary one, so it doesn't matter. This is the honorary one, so it doesn't count. I am cutting it for a Toxic Deluge that I just opened in Double Masters. But Mr. Combo, why don't you? So that's my honorary one. Why don't you? Can you?
Okay. So now we're doing honorary.
That
mentions.
One doesn't count for me,
right.
but I knew that you had your frickin' laser sights on that from a mile away, like American Sniper. So why don't you start off with the cuts there?
All right. So my under 5, I will cut Crux of Fate, and I'm going to cut it for a card that. Oh, we didn't even read what Crux of Fate does.
Sure.
So, Crux of Fate, guys, 2 black, 3 colorless, sorcery, and has 2 effects. Choose one. I'm doing this all from memory because I know how bad this card is. Destroy all non-dragon creatures or destroy all dragon creatures.
The only thing you missed there was that it is 3 and 2 black, and somehow this card's $1.50. So, again, yes.
What I'm going to do is I like the fact of having some sort of board wipe-ish effect, because I don't really think you have any of that type of stuff in here, which could be your downfall.
Agreed.
So Toxic Deluge is great, but I wanted to give you something that is a pet card of yours from Zur.
Oh.
I didn't like it in Zur that much. I love it in this deck if you build it right with Angie, because you could, in theory, board wipe your opponents every single one of your turns. Archfiend of Ifnir.
Oh, yeah.
So, 3 colorless black creature demon. It's a 5/4. It has flying. Whenever you cycle or discard another card, put a -1/-1 counter on each creature your opponents control, cycling for 2. So, couple things. 1, early game, you could cycle it away for 2 mana, go to your graveyard. You have plenty of ways to kind of do a creature rigmarole swap to get it back. Mid to late game, if you build an appropriate Angie deck, you could play this and possibly discard 4 cards on your turn. That's 4 -1/-1 counters. 9 times out of 10, that's a board wipe, or you made everything into 1/1s or 2/2s. So I think this thing slams, and it's a flyer. So a 5 in the air will help kind of progress your game along. And I'm pretty sure I told you to cut this from your Zur deck or whatever previous. It's whatever the most recent deck we talked about of yours.
It was Nekazar, and you are 100% correct. I have all these lying around the binder, so we'll be making that cut this very evening.
All right. Well, what is your under 5 cut and
so
add?
I'm about to get a little crazy.
What?
About to get a little crazy. I'm actually going to cut Hedron Archive.
For me,
yeah, exactly. I just have one of those two. No, so Hedron Archive is.
Oh, I thought you were serious.
I gotta figure, dude. Talk about analysis paralysis. I have a stack of cards from. I still have the stack from Double Masters. I don't do it. So Hedron Archive is 4 colorless. Tap it for 2 colorless. 2 tap sack. Draw 2 cards. So it's fine, but it doesn't really fit the theme. And I just had one lying around. It's just kind of a generic, good budget mana rock. So instead, I'm gonna cut it for something that will lower the curve and also feed into the deck. So I'm actually going to cut it for Bog Witch. So Bog Witch is a common. It's 2 colors and a black for a creature human spell shaper. And again, I'm hot on this creature train and trying to get more of them in here, right? So black tap, discard a card, add 3 black mana. So I like that a lot more than Hedron Archive because it lowers the CMC. And even though you could argue you only do this once a turn, you're like, okay, you can only do Hedron Archives. You can only do Hedron Archives abilities once a turn, anyways. Whether it's the mana or tap and draw. And I think for me, if we're trying to cut out, and maybe I'll keep Hedron Archive in, cut out some Madness card for this. The fact that this is just another built-in discard effect can be very powerful. The fact it's also a creature, plays into the Tortured Existence, plays into its early Badgesaur, that sort of thing, I think more than Hedron Archive could.
I don't hate it. The thing I don't like about it is technically Hedron Archive, you can play for 4 and then immediately tap for 2, versus this play for 3 and you gotta wait the rotation to net 2. So that's the only thing I don't like about it. But I can see where you're going with it.
And a lot of time,
I mean, I guess there is always the Olivia we talked about. You could discard something, throw a counter on it, and then it has haste.
And I will say
the deck tech.
Yeah, that hotness. I will say a lot of the times, like with Hedron Archive, because it is 4. Generally, when I play it, I'm not doing anything with that mana, anyways. Right? I like tap out for Hedron. Okay. It's there, unless I have a Soul Ring or a Felwar Stone or something.
Yeah, dude, you got to think those pro plays where it's like I'm going to tap out for Hedron Archive, then tap it for 2,
and then go down
play
to the
this Signet.
So, I thought I'd get a little crazy. All right, so what's your second cut?
All right, so my second cut for my under 50, I'm cutting the Vengeful Pharaoh. Don't need to go into it. Basically, I looked at Archfiend of Ifnir is kind of the Vengeful Pharaoh replacement. Yeah. So what I'm going to cut it for, though, we're on the Archfiend train. And this is a madness card. Archfiend of Spite.
Ooh.
5 colorless, black, creature demon. It's a 6/6 rare, and it has madness for 3 black, so it gets a 2 reduction when you madness it. And it says whenever a source an opponent controls deals damage to Archfiend of Spite, that source's controller loses life that much unless they sacrifice that many permanents. I think this thing will wreck in your deck. And when it goes to the graveyard, we've discussed, you have ways of manipulating your graveyard to get stuff back. It'll feed into Angie, so now you're discarding, playing it for cheap, getting other effects, and you got a 6/6 beater in the air. Oh, you want a chump block with a 1/1? Well, looks like you're gonna have to sack a permanent or lose a life anyways. So it's just going to feed into a lot of these things. And then, God, if you put an equipment in here, I don't know why you would, but say you turn it into a Croxa deck, put an equipment in to give trample.
Oof.
Trample, God.
Turns into like a Phyrexian Negator. I agree. And this is also one. So this was in the pre-con. I agree with you. I foolishly cut it because I've seen the pre-con just played straight out. And this card was like borderline unbeatable because it's like right on the edge of using a removal for because it's only a 6/6. And I put it into my crappy Rakdos flip a coin. So I'm pretty sure I have 2 cuts lying around that I'm going to slot right back into this.
Man, I'm 2 for 2. That's never happened.
Hey, one more. You're on fire.
All right.
Oh.
Ooh. NBA Jam rules.
Yes, sir.
They count. All right, Big Tuck. What's your under 50?
So I cut a Planeswalker, and I remember being extremely hot on this, and the more we've talked about it, how dare you? Best card in the deck, please. I don't think this is a good card. So I'm going to cut Chandra Flamecaller. So 4 colorless, red, so it's 6 for 4 with 4 loyalty, legendary Planeswalker Chandra. So +1, create 2 3/1 red elemental creature tokens with haste. Exile them at the beginning of the next end step. In this deck, nothing. Does literally nothing, right?
I mean, look, it doesn't do nothing because you are.
I need to win somehow. So
you have to win somehow, and this at least puts 6 damage on the board that your opponents have to block. And once again, if you turn this into a Croxa deck, well, it's like, gosh, do I put my resources to blocking Croxa because that's command damage, or do I stop these 3/1s that just keep me over and over? So I don't think it's nothing, but I think the next ability is probably what you're more excited about.
So that's what I thought, right? So 0 is discard all the cards in your hand and then draw that many cards +1. And then its -X is it deals X damage to each creature, right? So the -X in my books, like I'm generating zombies and other things off of a bunch of things that
You're not
I'm never going to do it, right? And the issue I have with the 0 is that you have to discard all the cards in your hand. You don't get a choice, right? So it's not like you get to pick and choose the cards and then draw that many +1. It's all of them. It's kind of like an all or nothing thing. And
yeah, so here's the thing, is if you would have built the Angie deck the way Angie's supposed to be built, 80% of the cards you would be discarding would be madness cards to put additional triggers on the stack. So I think for the way, once again, the presently constructed, you're right. It's not a good card, but if you made this more into an Angie deck, I think it's a banger. Plus, we didn't talk about it, I don't think. Hold on, I've already blacked out all the cards we've talked about. Bone Miser, for example. I mean, that could trigger like 7 things off Bone Miser where you're getting like 8 additional mana and drawing X amount more cards. And so I think Chandra Flamecaller is a good card for the deck. I just think you need to tune it a little bit more. And to another point, I get it at 6 mana, but I treat Chandra Flamecaller very similar to Jace the Mind Sculptor. When I play Jace and people just see that I'm brainstorming, it's like, that's great value for 0. But is he winning the game right now? No. I'd rather focus on another scary Planeswalker threat. And I think Chandra's probably in that same boat.
I think if it was like 1 less, or you had the ability to choose this card, then I'd be more on board with it. But every time I've cast this in this deck, I'm always like, well, I don't want to 0 it because I will like the cards in my hand. And
so it sounds like you don't want to play a Madness deck.
Probably not.
That would be madness.
I'm going to cut it for a new card. It's a mythic. We're talking Cavalier of Flame. So 2 colorless, triple red.
I got
Do you
one.
Really? Hold on to that. So it's a 6/5 elemental knight, which is a big boy. And I like your idea with the last card too of actually getting some like real creatures in here that can do something. So, colorless and red creatures you control get +1/+0, gain haste until end of turn. Due to the Waste Knots, the Bone Misers, and the Surly Badgesaurs of the world, that actually does make a lot of sense. If you have some monster turn where you generate 20 zombies, and you're like, well, okay, pass, board wipe, game over. And this is the part I like about it too. When it enters the battlefield, discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards, right? So
I can see
you see what I'm getting at, where it's like if you have the Bone Miser and the Surly Badgesaur, you can stack it when you discard to get the most value out of it. And then the last one, which is a little bit more tangential, but still pretty good. When it dies, it deals X damage to each opponent and each planeswalker they control, where X is the number of land cards in your graveyard. So you will be cycling through your deck. You will be discarding lands. Like a lot of times when I play this, I'm like land discard, like with Olivia, right? Like end of turn, tap, draw land, discard a land, that sort of stuff. So I don't think I have any sacrifice outlets in the deck that I can think of, but the fact that this has 3 abilities lets you give a little bit more choice in what you're doing with the discard as opposed to the Chandra, and even costs 1 less. The triple red, again, I've never really run into that issue. I think this card fills in a really, really good gap in the deck and what it needs.
Yeah, I'd agree. You know what? Now seeing it, I'm fine with that swap. Plus, this is a creature, so you do have, like we've talked about, a few different ways to get creatures back. You have 0 ways of getting planeswalkers back. Granted, I think this will be more of a target than Chandra will be, because if people are smart, they will know, oh my gosh, he has his like cycle or discard engine going. This turn we could die to a swarm of zombies or whatever's, because the 2 mana to give everything +1/+0 and haste is kind of like Kenrith's ability, like you've seen in my Game of Thrones deck, where I just like, oh, I play a bunch of stuff, pay a red, haste,
there you go,
going in for the kill now.
But even if it does get removed, it still does something as well, right? Because it has a dice trigger. So just thought it did a lot of work in this deck.
All right, so my personal recommendation cut. Card's too narrow. I don't like it. Unearth.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Single black sorcery from my set, Modern Horizons. And it has cycling for 2, but it also says return target creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. I'm not going to go into details of why that's not a great card.
It does cycle, though, which is the only reason why I like it. But it's extremely narrow.
Yes. So I'm going to do it for a card I am shocked you do not have in here. It's 79 cents at Card Kingdom, 54 cents on the market. Shadow of the Grave.
Oh, yeah, that card's good.
Colorless black, instant, return to your hand all cards in your graveyard that you cycled or discarded this turn. I mean, like we talked about this engine that you can have going, you'd play that and you probably win on the spot if you did your thing right. But once again, you have to build the deck to be more Angie focused than just this, I'm going to discard stuff to discard stuff. Because this card does nothing for you if you're playing your Knight's Whisperer, doing your Cavaliers of Flame, because it's like, cool, I got all those cards back, but now I got to discard at the end of turn. How is that going to help me? I mean, I guess you could discard at end of turn and still get some triggers from some other things. But I think this is the kind of card that, even if you tapped out to do everything, is you have 1 madness card with Angie. You could start the train, generate your value with your Bone Misers and your Others of the World, and then generate, and at the end of the whole deal, and it's like, I got 1 card potentially left in hand, or even 3 or 4, Shadow of the Grave for some of the mana that I produced. Let's start the train over again and kind of keep digging down.
That's 3 for 3.
And do you own a copy of this?
I do, but I think it's already in my Zur deck. But again, it's 70 cents or whatever, so I'm sure I could.
Too expensive.
It's way too expensive.
Too sweet.
Way too much for me.
All right, man. We're at it.
We're doing it.
Personal recommendations. What are you cutting?
So
first?
I think if I do this cut, I'm gonna have to change a lot of things in this deck, but I think it's gonna work for the best. And by change a lot of things, I mean I'm gonna spend a lot of money. So I'm actually, in the current build of the deck, I'm gonna cut Olivia Mobilize for War. Right? Like, I think she's great, but I just don't think I have enough creatures that really matter. And the times where I played this deck, the creatures I have are just keeping me alive as I go through my cycle rigmarole, as I go through my discard rigmarole. So we're going to double the deck's budget unless I get one of those sweet gold border versions of it, we're going to go with the classic Yawgmoth's Will. So 2 colorless and 2 colorless and black. I thought you'd be proud. Finally decided to dust off the coffers. 2 colorless and a black. Until end of turn, you may play lands and cast spells from your graveyard. If a card will be put into your graveyard from anywhere this turn, exile it instead. So the way I look at the way you can rejigger this deck is putting in the Winds of Change effects and those sort of things, right? Where you have your Waste Not, your Bone Miser, and your Surly Badgesaur. This is Magic Christmas Land, obviously, right? So, but you have this ability where you're able to run your cycle cards, and that's going to generate you all this mana. Right, then and all these creatures, all these draws, Yogg will do it again, get even more value and all that other stuff, and this would be like the premier win con of this deck. Now, do I understand the insanity of getting Urza's Saga for a deck that I built mostly as a joke deck? Yes. But I think with the way that this deck could go, if they and to your point, if they make a new Rakdos Commander that does what I want Olivia or Anje to do better, that's where this card really would shine.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I mean, basically, I kind of read Yawgmoth's Will is any time in the game Shadow of the Grave.
Yes, right.
Literally, they basically do the same thing when you have your engine thing going. I mean, I'm lucky enough I was able to pick up a Yawgmoth's Will not for $140. And then I even got a foil promo from Missouri MTG. And I want to say I actually traded that in at OKC because I think they gave me like $150 for it, $170. And so I used that to... What did I use that for? I think I used that to build a deck. I can't remember. I might have used it just for more duels. That probably sounds more right. I used it to build my cEDH deck. I needed like 10 cards. So I like it. I'm going to be honest. I think Yawgmoth's Will falls into the Jace the Mind Sculptor realm, to where the card, for the cost that it is, does not provide the value in-game that it should. A $140 card shouldn't just be, you may now cast cards for their mana cost out of your graveyard, and then when they go there, they get exiled. It should be a lot more broken than that. Once again, though, as we've talked a lot tonight, if you build the deck either more towards Anje or you made it more of a Croxa build, you could get it to where it does function, but I like it as a personal recommendation because usually you don't go for the fences in terms of dollar amounts. I just don't know if, even if you were like, I'm going to trade up
if it's worth it.
Like, say your Mana Crypt, it's worth $150, and a shop was like, hey, I'll trade you the Crypt for the Yawgmoth's Will. I don't even know if I don't know if I would do that. Hell, even if it was like 2 Jace the Mind Sculptors for Yawgmoth's Will, don't know if I would do that. I'm proud of you. I just think we got to really, if we're gonna do that kind of cheddar, we got to make this deck a little bit more stinky.
I agree with you, and so what I might do instead we don't need to go into it, is do Underworld Breach, which does a worse version of this for $2, and be like, hey, does this actually do anything, or am I just living some sort of pipe dream?
Yeah, no, I like that. And you know what else I like? The fact that we're at the end of the episode, and as promised, here are some details about our giveaway from our sponsor, Level 1 Game Shop. We're giving away those 3 super sweet lands, and this is the last land to announce. City of Brass, 6th edition. Nice. Older copy. I think it's white border too, so you can set people on tilt. If you want to know how to win, it's extremely simple. Subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the audio, help promote the content that we produce on social media. You get an entry for every single thing you do with us, and even if you join our Patreon, you get additional entries there. We're going to announce the winner on MTG Action 4 News September 1st, and we will put it on our Twitter account soon after. And yes, going to be doing these giveaways every single month. Could be a little sweet little land package like this. It could be a little deck that the collective puts together. I thought that might be kind of fun to do some month. Or it could be whatever Level 1 decides to give us. But if you liked what you watched or listened to, leave that 5-star review, subscribe to our channel, or on whatever platform you consumed us on. We like the nice things. Tell us sweet nothings.
Right in our ears.
Those are the best. If you'd like to reach out to us and find out more ways you can enter into the contest, here's how you can do that. You can reach me at Mr. Comma number 5 on Twitter, all spelled out except for the 5. BigTuck, if they wanted to interact with your madness, where should they get compromised at?
I am still foolishly on Twitter at BigTuck tweeting on the Twitterverse.
And I still have not updated my notes in however long you've had Twitter to your actual Twitter handle. If you wanted to reach our main account, they're at CMD Tower on Twitter as well. We have a website where we will have the deck list and article posted, cmdtower.com. Basically, type in Canyon Slough, Memorial to Folly, Drownyard Temple, Tower.com.
Now we're talking.
Squee McGee, if people want to find out how to get a hold of yourself and possibly rub your tummy for good luck for when they buy a collection of 20,000 cards, as discussed in this week's MTG Action 4 News, how could they do that?
You can find me on Facebook or Instagram at Rich Chaos Records. You can find me at dearsquee@cmdtower.com. Preferred method of communication is still email. I am on the Twitterverse. If you want to tweet at me, sure. I'll probably respond a little bit late. Y'all like doing things really quickly in Twitter, and I'm just not there that often. Other than that, that's all I got.
He can do all of your audio needs and does have a full studio if you are in the local KC metro area. And you'll have to wear gloves, you'll have to wear a mask, you'll have to wear goggles, but you can rub his Buddha belly. If you want to hook up our sponsor to let them know that these monthly giveaways are worth doing for us, head over to level1gameshop.com. When you place an order in the order notes, just type in CMD Tower. So then it came from The Collective. They do have their own storefront where they sell all the gaming accessories you need, CMD Tower merch, but they also do have a TCG player store, so if you need to pick up those singles or a sealed product, you can do that as well. Another way that you can actually help us financially directly is to go to our Patreon, patreon.com/CMD Tower. We have several different reward tiers, and like I said, you can get that Discord access. You can join the BigTuck's Brew Buddies and actually get your own set of sleeves, a sweet coin, and a BigTuck Monarch gold medal token. As well as I mentioned earlier, every additional tier gives you entries into the monthly giveaways, and hopefully we will hit 50 patrons here soon, so that way we can start having some of the collective appear on Brews and Builds. And of course, again, Pink Royal, props. We like you.
Still like you.
So BigTuck, you fought real hard to try to do this deck a couple weeks ago. I told you to hold on. But when Angie quoted, "We all go a little mad sometime," it was worth the wait to me. How about yourself?
Yeah, it's same. And what's weird is, like, every time, this is one of those decks where I always just pack, because every time I play it, I always have fun. So it's like kind of in this weird middle ground where it's like, I know that it could probably go one way or the other and turn it into something that's less like just having fun and something where it's like a little bit more interactive, has a little bit more juice behind it. And I think that the most...
More juice for the squeeze.
Yes, exactly. Which is such a great idiom. And I think you really hit the nail on the head where I want this deck to operate in a different way that Angie won't give me. Right? So, like, that's why she's always kind of just like, I play her on turn 3, I discard some cards and hope I get something else. So I think if there's a Rakdos that has a little, there's a Rakdos Commander that comes out that has a little bit more like care around drawing cards or some other sort of juice there, I think it should be an easy swap. I will be trying out the Cruxo or whatever that card is called. Cruxo, thank you. Next time I run this. So what'd you think just looking through it? I know you've seen this a couple times in the live.
I 100% agree. I mean, granted, I hate when you play this deck because BigTuck does that pro player thing where it's just with his cards.
We found out last Friday he mutilates them. They're all in a U shape now.
Yeah, I manhandle my cards evidently.
But here's the thing: even if you like, say if you ran Croxa and you're like, I get too much hate, you can put Xantcha as the commander. And she would probably give you more to do than Angie would. Because then you could just pay, I have nothing to do. I'll pay 3 mana and I'm going to draw a card and they're going to lose some life. That would work out really, really well. I mean, you could even, I'm kind of looking at the different Rakdos commanders. You could even go with a Neheb the Worthy, even though you're not doing Minotaur Tribal. It's still basically more value than what Angie's doing, because whenever he deals damage to a player, each player discards a card. That actually counts for you. Or you could just even go Karavek the Merciless. Hey, I'm just going to have a big boy. If I need to cast him later, I can. And he is just going to mess people up when they cast those spells. So I do think you have a lot of different avenues you could go. that would maybe make a little bit more sense than Angie if you didn't want to turn Angie into the deck that she needs to be, maybe not the one she deserves to be. Well, that's all for us, guys. Bye.